Okay, let's dive into this because I want to start off by challenging a really deeply ingrained assumption that almost all of us make about money. If I were to ask you right now to categorize yourself financially, lower, middle, or upper class, you'd probably have an answer ready before I even finished the sentence. But what if I told you that the way you're measuring your wealth is actually fundamentally flawed? See, most people base their financial standing on what they can see. The lifestyle, the monthly paycheck, the perfectly curated online presence. But in this explainer, we are going to completely tear down that illusion. We're going to look at the raw, undeniable math of wealth in America, and we'll be climbing the ladder all the way from the bottom 25% right up to the top 10%. So, are you lower, middle, or upper class? When you answer that in your head, your gut reaction is almost certainly based on how you feel, right? It's based on your neighborhood, the kind of car you drive, whether you dine out a lot, or how your life generally compares to your friends' lives. But here's the wild thing. Your wealth class actually has absolutely nothing to do with any of those things. It all comes down to one single and often super surprising mathematical metric, and that is your net worth. And let me tell you, when people actually sit down and calculate this raw number, almost nobody sits exactly where they assumed they did. And this brilliantly illustrates why our feelings can be so deceptive. Just think about this comparison for a second. Imagine a surgeon earning a massive $350,000 a year, but they're carrying $400,000 in debt. Now compare them to a teacher earning $55,000, but with a fully paid off house and $80,000 sitting in retirement accounts. Now the surgeon definitely feels rich. The teacher probably doesn't. But the math doesn't care about our feelings. The single most common mistake people make is thinking that income equals wealth. It doesn't. Income is just a flow. It comes in, it goes out. Wealth, on the other hand, is a stock. It's what you have actually accumulated and held on to. So to make sure we're all on the exact same page, let's establish our baseline definition. And we're using data straight from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances. This is basically the gold standard, the most comprehensive wealth study in the country. Your net worth is simply everything you own, your assets, minus everything you owe, your liabilities. So that means adding up your home, your savings, retirement accounts, and investments, and then subtracting your mortgages, car loans, student debt, and credit card balances. That single resulting number is what determines where you actually sit on the wealth ladder. Notice something missing? Your paycheck, quite literally, does not factor into this equation at all. To really wrap our heads around these brackets, we aren't just going to stare at a list of numbers. We're going to follow a highly relatable, real-world scenario. So, meet Tyler. Tyler is 34 years old, works as a marketing manager, and earns a really solid $85,000 a year. So he takes home about $5,200 a month. He rents a nice, decent apartment for $1,600, drives a relatively new 2022 sedan, puts a little bit into his 401k, goes out with his friends on the weekends, and, of course he pays for 3 different streaming subscriptions that he barely even watches. By all outward appearances, Tyler feels solidly, comfortably middle class.
But let's lift the hood for a second and look at Tyler's actual balance sheet. On the asset side, his car is worth $22,000. He's got $12,000 in his 401k and $3,000 in his savings account. So total assets, $37,000. Not bad, right? Well, now let's look at the debt. He still owes $18,000 on that car, and he has $26,000 remaining in student loans. Total debt, $44,000. The illusion of his successful middle-class lifestyle is actually hiding a really serious balance sheet problem lurking just beneath the surface.
Because when we subtract his $44,000 in debt from his $37,000 in assets, we get his actual net worth. And it's negative. Tyler's net worth is negative $7,000. So the crucial point is Tyler is not middle class at all. Mathematically speaking, he is sitting firmly in the bottom 25% of American households. And let me be clear, he is definitely not alone here. Millions of Americans are in this exact same position. They're earning a great income, living what looks like a totally normal middle-class life, but possessing a completely negative net worth. Let's break down the reality of this bottom 25% bracket a bit more. This includes everyone with a net worth below $23,000. Now, the biggest misconception out there is that this group is only made up of minimum wage workers, but it absolutely isn't. This bracket is a massive trap for high earners. People making $60,000, $80,000, or even $100,000 a year get stuck here. The money comes in, and the money immediately goes out to car payments, rent, and that quiet, gradual trap of lifestyle creep. For Tyler specifically, his biggest problem is zero home equity, which is usually the biggest wealth-building vehicle, and retirement savings that are just far too small for his age and his income. Now, let's start climbing. The next rung up is the lower middle class. and this represents a net worth between $23,000 and $179,000. To just barely cross into this bracket, Tyler needs to close a $30,000 gap from his current negative $7,000. He could totally do this. If he aggressively paid off his student loans over, say, 3.5 years, he'd be there. But you know what's fascinating? It's how most people actually arrive in this bracket. It is usually not through brilliant stock picking or intense saving. Most people arrive here totally accidentally, simply by buying a house. See, for the lower middle class, home equity makes up the overwhelming majority of their net worth, usually about 70%. A typical household in this bracket might boast a $71,000 net worth on paper. And hey, that sounds like really solid progress. But there is a major catch. Most of that wealth is literally locked inside the walls of a house. You can't spend home equity at the grocery store. You can't use it to quickly cover a sudden medical emergency, at least not without taking on even more debt to access it. Continuing our way up the ladder, we reach a very, very important milestone, $193,000. This is the exact median net worth for American households. It's the precise midpoint. Literally, half of the country has more than this, and half has less. When people see this exact number, it's funny. They usually think it's either wildly low, because social media and headlines make everyone feel like everybody else is rich, or they think it's wildly high, because they personally are nowhere near it. Honestly, it just goes to prove how incredibly distorted our collective view of the middle actually is. And right here is the real shocker hidden inside that median number. If you strip out home equity, because remember, you can't easily spend your roof, and you only look at the liquid financial cushion a family can actually access tomorrow, the median liquid net worth for an American household plummets. It drops to just $30,000 to $40,000. That is terrifyingly fragile. And that fragile cushion explains exactly why one surprise medical bill, one layoff, or one major car transmission repair can send an apparently stable median household into a complete financial tailspin. Let's move to and see how this builds into the upper middle class, which ranges from a net worth of $193,000 all the way up to $610,000. Now, entering this bracket represents a fundamental shift in behavior. Below this line, wealth is mostly built accidentally, right? Usually through forced monthly mortgage payments. But inside this bracket, wealth building becomes highly intentional. People here are maxing out their 401ks, they're utilizing taxable brokerages, and they are carrying strategic, low-interest debt, rather than suffocating under high-interest consumer credit cards. By the time a household reaches roughly $500,000 in net worth, the entire asset mix dramatically rebalances. The split is much closer to 50-50 between home equity and actual financial investments. And this is absolutely crucial because investments actually compound. They generate returns, which then turn around and generate even more returns. A house just sits there. This upper middle class bracket really acts as the financial launchpad, where compound growth finally steps in and starts doing the heavy lifting of wealth creation for you. Next up is the upper class. This puts you securely in the top 25% of American households, ranging from $610,000 to $1.72 million. Now, if you think this bracket is just filled with people driving flashy, exotic cars and wearing designer clothes, think again. The data consistently shows us that households in this range build their wealth through disciplined, consistent saving and investing over decades. It's not just about a massive six-figure salary. Getting here requires no massive inheritance, no lucky lottery tickets. It just requires time and serious intention. And at this level, we see the final total inversion of the asset mix. At this upper class tier, financial assets and investments completely dominate the pie, making up about 75% of total net worth. Your house is no longer your biggest asset, your investment portfolio is. And the math here is wild. It shows that it takes far less time to go from $600,000 to $1 million than it took to go from 0 to $600,000. Why? Because at this stage, compounding is exponential. It's no longer linear. Your money is essentially cloning itself. Finally, at the very top of our ladder, we have the top 10%. This starts at $1.72 million and goes up from there. Wealth functions completely differently up here. Think about it. If you have a $1.72 million portfolio and it's earning a very modest 4% annually, that generates about $69,000 a year in passive income, and that's without even touching the principal. At this point, the money is literally working harder than most people do in their day jobs. It buys total financial independence, it completely elevates your risk tolerance, and it multiplies your opportunities in life. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is we've actually had a massive blind spot up until this point. See, all those previous brackets just lumped every single American together. It compared a 25-year-old recent college grad to a 65-year-old retiree who has been saving for 40 years. And honestly, that makes absolutely no sense. When you look at the Federal Reserve data broken down by age, you see a completely different landscape. The median for people under 35 is just $39,000, and then it peaks at $365,000 for those nearing retirement. Context is absolutely everything here. So let's bring this reality check all the way back to our guy Tyler. Remember him? He's 34 with a net worth of negative $7,000. Overall, we knew he was in the bottom 25%. But when you compare him to his specific peers, people under 35, where the median is $39,000, Tyler is actually $46,000 behind the average. He is sitting at roughly the 10th percentile for his exact age bracket. That means 90% of households his age have a higher net worth than he does. Ouch, that stings for sure. But hey, it also provides a highly accurate baseline. Knowing exactly where he stands, Tyler is now facing a massive sliding doors moment. From this exact starting point, let's project 3 wildly different, but very realistic, futures over the next 20 years. Scenario 1 is coasting. He changes absolutely nothing, makes the minimum payments, and just lets his current lifestyle ride. Scenario 2 is intentional. He cuts some discretionary spending to free up $700 a month to crush his debt and start investing. And Scenario 3 is aggressive. He actively increases his income, avoids all lifestyle creep, maybe house hacks a duplex, and invests a solid $1,500 every single month. Fast forward 20 years later. Tyler is now 54, and the divergence here is staggering. If Tyler coasts, he ends up with $120,000. He is still well below the median for his age. But if he gets intentional, his net worth climbs to $500,000, putting him right in the 75th percentile. But what if he gets aggressive? He hits $1 million, elevating him straight into the top 25% of all households. I mean, look at that staggering $880,000 gap between coasting and getting aggressive. From negative $7,000 to $1 million, and it's all built on realistic math, not inheritances or lotteries. It's just the exponential, life-changing power of compound growth. Ultimately, all of this boils down to one singular, incredibly powerful truth. It comes down to what you keep and what you invest, not what you earn. The phrase high income, low net worth exists for a very real reason. You can earn an incredible top-tier salary your entire life, but if you don't direct that flow of money into assets that actually compound over time, the wealth ladder is going to remain entirely out of reach. Building wealth isn't magic. It is an intentional, mathematical process driven by your behavior to construct your balance sheet over time. So we end this explainer right where we began, but hopefully with a brand new perspective. Knowing your actual number, stripping away all the illusions of your paycheck, your car, and your lifestyle, what is your next move? Look, if calculating your true net worth today surprised you or even made your stomach drop a little bit, remember that it is not a failure. It is just information. And having that cold, hard, mathematical information is literally the very first and most powerful step for any real financial transformation. The ladder isn't fixed, but you can't start climbing it until you know exactly which rung you're standing on right now.